For 75 years, the United States has spent trillions of dollars defending Europe. American soldiers died on European soil. American taxpayers funded the most powerful military alliance in human history. NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was supposed to be the ultimate promise. Attack one of us, and you attack all of us. Last week, the President of the United States asked his allies for help, not for troops, not for soldiers on the ground. He asked them to send a few ships, minesweepers, patrol boats, to help keep the Strait of Hormuz open so that oil could flow and your gas prices wouldn't hit $6 a gallon. Every single one of them said no. Australia said no. Japan said no. Poland said no. Spain said no. Sweden said no. Germany said, and I quote, no military participation. France went silent. South Korea said they're reviewing it. The UK offered to maybe send some drones. Maybe. 75 years, trillions of dollars, thousands of American lives. And when America asked for help, not even combat help, just a few boats, the answer was silence. Today, I'm going to show you why this happened, what it really means, and why this single moment may have just rewritten the global order. Let me unpack it. Let's start with the official story. NATO's founding principle, Article 5, says an attack on one member is an attack on all members. It's only been invoked once in 75 years. You know when? September 11th, 2001. After 3,000 Americans died, NATO allies came to America's defense. Troops from dozens of nations deployed to Afghanistan. Over 1,000 coalition soldiers gave their lives fighting alongside Americans. That was the promise. That was the deal. The United States spends hundreds of billions every year maintaining military bases across Europe, funding NATO's infrastructure, and providing the nuclear umbrella that lets European nations spend their budgets on healthcare and education instead of aircraft carriers. It sounds like a partnership, doesn't it? Let me show you why it was always a one-way street. Here's the math. The United States spends approximately $901 billion per year on defense. That's the 2026 National Defense Authorization Act, $901 billion. That's more than the next 10 countries combined. America accounts for roughly 68% of all NATO defense spending. The remaining 31 member nations, combined, account for the other 32%. For decades, most NATO members failed to meet the alliance's own guideline of spending 2% of GDP on defense. The United States has been subsidizing European security since 1949, and in return, when America needed a few patrol boats in the Strait of Hormuz, not soldiers, not fighter jets, just boats, the answer was no military participation. Let that sink in. Now here's where it gets interesting, because the surface explanation, we don't want to get involved in someone else's war, sounds reasonable, but let me show you the real reasons, and they have nothing to do with pacifism. Reason number one, Trump didn't ask before he attacked. According to CNN, many leaders in Europe and the Persian Gulf said they were caught completely by surprise when the first missiles hit Iran on February 28th. Trump did not seek buy-in from any country besides Israel before launching Operation Epic Fury. He didn't consult NATO. He didn't brief European leaders. He didn't ask for a vote at the UN Security Council. He started a war unilaterally and then demanded help after the consequences started piling up. That's not how alliances work, and every European leader knows it. Reason number two, Trump spent years burning bridges. Let me show you the timeline because this is where the math of diplomacy comes in. In January 2026, just weeks before the Iran war, Trump was still openly talking about invading Greenland, a territory of Denmark, a NATO ally. He called Canada the 51st state. He slapped tariffs on virtually every European economy. He told the Financial Times that NATO countries were freeloaders. And in late January, he said, and this is a direct quote, "We've never needed them. We have never really asked anything of them." That was 6 weeks ago, 6 weeks before he needed them. Now imagine you're Emmanuel Macron, or Keir Starmer, or Olaf Scholz. For years, the American president has insulted you, threatened your economy, called your alliance useless, and publicly said he doesn't need you. Then he starts a war without telling you, the oil market collapses, and suddenly he's on the phone demanding you send your navy to clean up his mess. What would you do? Reason number three, and this is the one nobody is talking about. The war is illegal under international law, and European governments know it. NATO's Article 5 is a defensive provision. It applies when a member nation is attacked. But Iran didn't attack the United States. The United States and Israel attacked Iran. Congress did not authorize this war. The UN Security Council did not authorize this war. Ireland's president publicly called it a violation of international law. If European nations send ships to support this operation, they become legally complicit in an unauthorized military action. Their own courts, their own parliaments, their own voters would hold them accountable. The political cost is simply too high. Here's what nobody in Washington wants to say out loud. America's allies didn't abandon America. America abandoned the alliance first. Now zoom out, because here's where this story goes from embarrassing to genuinely dangerous. The Strait of Hormuz is not just an oil route. It is the single most important choke point in the global economy. 20% of the world's oil supply passes through this narrow waterway, roughly 21 million barrels per day. Before the war, it flowed freely. Now Iran has effectively shut it down. Only about 90 ships, including oil tankers, have crossed the strait since the war began, a fraction of normal traffic. Oil prices have spiked from $70 to over $106 per barrel. The International Energy Agency declared an emergency and released 400 million barrels from strategic reserves worldwide. And here's the paradox that should terrify every American. Trump started this war partly to project American strength, but the Hormuz crisis is proving the opposite. It's proving that the United States cannot secure the world's most important shipping lane alone. The U.S. Navy is the most powerful naval force in history. But the Strait of Hormuz is narrow, at its tightest point, just 21 miles wide. Iran has thousands of small boats, sea mines, anti-ship missiles, and submarine capabilities positioned along hundreds of miles of coastline. Clearing mines alone requires specialized vessels that the U.S. has very few of. That's why Trump asked for minesweepers from the UK. That's why he asked Japan and South Korea for patrol boats. Not because he wanted to, but because he had to, and they said no. So now the United States is in a position where it is spending $1 billion per day on a war. It cannot fully secure the most important oil route on the planet, its allies refuse to help, and oil prices are strangling the very voters who elected Trump on a promise of lower costs. Let me translate that into dollars deducted from your checking account. Since the allies said no, there is no international naval coalition to reopen the strait. That means oil supply remains restricted. That means Brent crude stays above $100. That means your gas price, already up 81 cents in 18 days, has no ceiling. Analysts at the Eurasia Group project crude could hit $120 or higher if the strait remains contested. Every day the allies say, no, you pay more at the pump. This isn't geopolitics. This is your grocery bill. But here's the part that keeps me up at night, because this isn't just about the Strait of Hormuz. This is about something much, much bigger. For 75 years, the global order has rested on a simple deal. America provides security, and in return, the world follows American rules. American currency, American trade networks, American military bases, the Pax Americana. What happened last week may have just cracked the foundation of that order. Think about what the world just witnessed. The most powerful nation on earth started a war, got into trouble, asked for help, and was told no by virtually everyone. Not by enemies, by allies, by nations that have lived under the American security umbrella for 3 generations. China is watching. Russia is watching. Every mid-sized power that has been calculating whether to align with Washington or hedge its bets, they're all watching. And what they see is an America that is powerful enough to start wars but not persuasive enough to build coalitions. An America that demands loyalty but doesn't return it. An America that says, we don't need anyone, and then begs for minesweepers. Now zoom out even further. Trump himself connected the dots. He told reporters that he might rethink America's commitment to NATO. He invoked U.S. support for Ukraine, saying European nations benefited from American aid but refused to reciprocate. Let me show you the math on what that means. If the United States reduces or withdraws its NATO commitment, Europe faces a $400 billion defense gap overnight. European nations would need to more than double their military spending within years. Germany would need to rebuild an army it has systematically downsized since 1990. France and the UK would need to expand their navies dramatically. And who benefits from a fractured NATO? Russia. A weakened Western alliance is exactly what Moscow has been working toward for 20 years. Putin didn't need to fire a single missile at NATO. He just needed to wait for NATO to tear itself apart. The irony is staggering. A war that was supposed to demonstrate American strength may end up being the event that fractures the most successful military alliance in human history. And here's one more layer that almost nobody is connecting. Trump explicitly linked the Iran war to Ukraine. He told reporters, "We helped them, and they didn't help us." And I think that's a very bad thing for NATO. Now think about what that means for Ukraine. President Zelensky has been desperately trying to stay relevant during this crisis. He even offered Ukrainian drone expertise to help shoot down Iranian drones. An offer Trump publicly rejected, saying, "We don't need the help in drone defense." But here's the strategic calculation that should alarm every NATO member. Every Tomahawk missile fired at Iran is a Tomahawk not available for European defense. Every $1 billion spent on Operation Epic Fury is $1 billion not available for Ukraine. Every aircraft carrier repositioned to the Persian Gulf is an aircraft carrier not patrolling European waters. European leaders know this, and it terrifies them. Because the unspoken question hanging over every European capital right now is this: if Russia escalates in Ukraine tomorrow, will America come? Or will America say, "You didn't help us in Iran? Why should we help you?" That is the real consequence of last week. Not the oil prices, not the gas pump. The real consequence is that the 75-year promise, attack one of us, attack all of us, may no longer mean what it used to mean. The counter-argument, and it's a legitimate one, is that NATO's Article 5 is enshrined in treaty law, and no president can unilaterally withdraw. That's true on paper, but treaties are only as strong as the willingness to enforce them. And right now, the willingness is at its lowest point since 1949. Let me bring this home. 75 years ago, the United States built the most powerful alliance the world has ever seen. It cost trillions. It cost American lives. It kept the peace in Europe for 3 generations. Last week, the President of the United States asked that alliance for a few boats. Just boats. Not soldiers, not fighter jets, not nuclear submarines, minesweepers and patrol craft. And every single ally either said no or went silent. You can blame the allies for being ungrateful. You can blame the president for alienating them. You can blame the system for being outdated. But the math doesn't care about blame. The math says this: America is fighting $1 billion a day war alone. The Strait is still contested. Oil is above $100. Your gas is up 81 cents. Your groceries are next. And the alliance that was supposed to prevent exactly this scenario, the alliance that was supposed to make sure America never fights alone, just watched from the sidelines. So here's the question I want you to sit with tonight. If the most powerful alliance in history can't survive a 3-week war that nobody planned for, what happens when the real crisis comes? The math doesn't care about your politics. The math doesn't care about your party. The math just is. Tell me what you think in the comments. And if you want to understand the mechanisms behind the headlines, the math they don't show you on cable news, subscribe, because this is just the beginning.